Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The interstellar accord was that everyone had a reputation, and humanity's reputation was, to put it mildly, absolutely terrible in all the best ways. They were the species that looked at apex predators and went, "Aw, fluffy." They were the ones who showed up to diplomatic summits without natural armor, venom, or claws, and somehow survived by talking their way out of conflicts that should have ended with them as appetizers. They were soft, squishy, ridiculously fragile, and yet, impossibly, still kicking around the galaxy like they owned the place. Most species found this baffling. The predator species found it hilarious, right up until the day they didn't. That day started normally enough, which should have been everyone's first warning that chaos was about to unfold. The flagship Dominion's Pride hung in orbit above the neutral moon of Fortitude Station, looking exactly like what it was, a massive, over-armed monument to interstellar cooperation that could blast a small planet into debris if anyone got too rowdy during negotiations. Inside, in the medical wing that rarely saw actual use because most species could regenerate their way out of minor inconveniences, an argument was taking place that would later be referred to as the incident that started the whole mess. Ambassador Greninock of the Raxnali Collective was not a species known for patience. Standing at nearly 3 meters tall, covered in obsidian scales that could deflect plasma fire, with teeth that could punch through starship hulls, he was the living embodiment of "don't mess with me." His species had conquered 18 systems before deciding that diplomacy was more efficient than constant warfare, and even then, it was a close call. Right now, he was holding something that made him look absolutely terrifying and heartbreaking at the same time. A small, whimpering cub, wrapped in thermal blankets. "You will fix him," Grennock growled at the assembled medical staff, each word dripping with the kind of menace that usually preceded planetary evacuations. "Or I will consider this a diplomatic incident of the highest order." The head physician, a nervous Oflani named Quindal, whose species was great at science but terrible at confrontation, wrung his manipulator appendages anxiously. "Ambassador, please understand. We've tried everything within our medical protocols. The cub's heart defect is fixable," Greninock interrupted, his voice dropping to a register that made the walls vibrate. "Everything is fixable. You have technology that can rebuild limbs, cure plagues, extend lifespans by centuries. Fix my cub." "It's not that simple," Quindal's voice cracked, which didn't help his case. "Raxnali physiology is too volatile. Your healing factor works against surgical intervention. Any incision we make heals before we can complete the procedure. We've consulted with specialists across 6 sectors, and the consensus is that my genetic line ends here." Grennock's claws extended, each one longer than Quindal's arm. "That Pip dies because your advanced medicine is useless?" The cub, Pip, apparently, made a small, pained sound that somehow cut through all the posturing and threats like a knife through thermal shielding. That's when Dr. Imani walked in, coffee in hand, looking like someone who'd just sat through an extremely boring presentation and was ready to go home. She was human, which meant she was small by galactic standards, unarmed by any reasonable measure, and carrying a datapad that had her groundbreaking research on primitive human surgical techniques in modern applications, a paper that the medical community had politely described as charmingly antiquated, and a fascinating historical perspective on outdated practices. She'd spent the last 3 hours explaining to a room full of superior alien intellects why human surgeons still used scalpels, sutures, and manual dexterity instead of regeneration beams and cellular reconstruction fields. The response had been a lot of patronizing nods and suppressed laughter. Imani was not in a great mood. "What's all the shouting about?" she asked, sipping her coffee and eyeing the massive predator holding the tiny, dying cub. "I could hear you from the conference hall, and those walls are supposed to be soundproof." Quindal turned to her with the expression of someone spotting a life raft in a storm. "Dr. Imani? Perhaps you could explain to the ambassador that some conditions are simply beyond current medical intervention." "Let me see the cub," Imani said, setting down her coffee and already moving forward. The room went silent, the kind of silent that happens right before something catastrophically stupid occurs. "Dr. Imani," Quindal hissed, "that is a Raxnali predator cub. Their instincts, even young, are—" Yeah, apex hunter. Bite force that can crush titanium. I read the briefing." Imani was already in front of Grennock, looking up at the massive alien without a trace of fear. "May I examine your cub, Ambassador?" Grennock stared at her. The assembled medical staff held their collective breath, certain they were about to witness a human becoming a tragic diplomatic footnote. Then Pip whimpered again, and something in Grennock's expression shifted. "You think you can help him?" The threat was still there, but underneath it was something raw and desperate. "When all their technology cannot." "Won't know until I look," Imani replied, holding out her hands. "But I promise you this. I'll tell you the truth, whatever it is." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Grennock, with a gentleness that seemed impossible for someone his size, transferred the cub into Imani's arms. Pip was small, maybe the size of a house cat, if that house cat had scales, retractable claws, and bioluminescent markings along his spine that pulsed weakly with each struggling heartbeat. His breathing was shallow, rapid, and his eyes, large and golden and far, too aware, fixed on Imani with a look that she'd seen before. Trust mixed with fear, mixed with pain. She'd seen it in pediatric wards on Earth, in field hospitals on frontier colonies, in the eyes of every patient who was running out of options and hoping, desperately, that she could be the miracle they needed. "Hey there, little guy," Imani murmured, her fingers carefully palpating the cub's chest. "Let's see what we're working with, okay?" The medical scanner she pulled from her pocket was human-made, which meant it was considered laughably primitive by galactic standards. It didn't use quantum field analysis or cellular-level imaging. It was just really good at seeing inside bodies and showing what was wrong. Sometimes, Imani reflected as the scan completed, primitive was exactly what you needed. "Ventricular septal defect," she announced, studying the readout. "Hole in the heart between the lower chambers. Blood's mixing when it shouldn't, making his heart work overtime and failing to oxygenate properly." She looked up at Grennock. "His heart's literally working itself to death trying to compensate." "Can you fix it?" Grennock's voice was barely a whisper. Imani ran the calculations in her head. Raxnali healing factor. Check. Accelerated cellular regeneration that would close any incision within minutes. Check. Volatile physiology that made standard surgical intervention impossible. Check. She grinned. "Yeah, I can fix it. But I need 6 hours, a steady hand, and everyone to stop screaming like I'm about to do something crazy." "You are about to do something crazy," Quindal protested. "Their healing factor will work for me, not against me, if I do this right." Imani was already moving toward the surgical suite, still carrying Pip. "I'll need someone to prep a surgical field. Get me a cardiac bypass set up. Human design, not that regeneration field nonsense. And someone find Landon. Tell him to bring the thoracic kit. This is highly irregular, Quindal stammered, following her. The risk of is lower than doing nothing. Imani cut him off. She looked back at Grennock. Ambassador, I'm not going to lie to you. This is complicated, and there's risk. But that cub's dying right now, slowly, every day a little more. If we do nothing, you know how this ends. Grennock nodded, once, sharp and final. Do it. Right then. Imani pushed through the surgical suite doors. Let's go fix a heart. The surgery took exactly 6 hours and 23 minutes, which Imani later learned was logged as the most-watched medical procedure in interstellar Accord history. Every species with access to the medical wing's observation feed tuned in to watch the human do the impossible. Or the incredibly stupid. The line between those two had always been thin where humans were concerned. Landon arrived within 10 minutes, carrying enough human surgical equipment to stock a small hospital. He was the kind of nurse who'd seen everything, fixed most of it, and had opinions about all of it. He took one look at the tiny predator cub on the surgical table and whistled low. Boss, please tell me we're not doing open-heart surgery on something that can regenerate through titanium. We absolutely are, Imani replied, already scrubbing in. And we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. By old-fashioned, you mean insane. Landon, I love you. But if you're going to be negative, please do it quietly while handing me instruments. The trick, Imani explained to the watching medical community, who thought she was about to commit the galaxy's most well-documented medical disaster, was understanding that the Raxnali healing factor wasn't the enemy. It was a tool, if you knew how to use it. Standard surgical procedure for species with regenerative abilities involves suppressing that healing to keep incisions open. But suppressing a Raxnali healing factor was like trying to suppress a supernova. Technically possible, but you'd need enough drugs to kill the patient in the process. So Imani went the other direction. She made the incision fast, deep, and precise. The cub's healing factor immediately kicked in, trying to close the wound, but that's where human stubbornness came in. While alien medical technology relied on energy fields and cellular manipulation, human surgery was refreshingly direct. You held the damn thing open with retractors and worked faster than it could heal. Bypass established, Landon called out, monitoring the machine that was temporarily doing Pip's heart's job. This is either brilliant or we're both getting fired. Can't fire me. I'm technically a consultant, Imani replied, her hands steady as she worked inside a chest cavity the size of her palm. There's the defect. Okay, little guy, let's patch you up. The patch itself was a marvel of human stubbornness meeting alien biology. It was synthetic, biocompatible, and designed to integrate with living tissue. But unlike the advanced regenerative matrices the aliens used, it was simple. Just a physical barrier that would give the heart structure, while the Raxnali healing factor did what it did best: reinforce and strengthen. Human medicine. Sometimes the best solution is just putting a really good bandage on it and letting biology do the rest. Suturing, Imani announced, her hands moving with the kind of precision that came from years of practice and natural talent. The healing factor's trying to help, which is great, but it's also trying to close around my instruments, which is less great. Landon, retraction. On it? The gallery of watching physicians was dead silent. Some were horrified. Some were fascinated. All of them were certain this wasn't going to work. Then Imani placed the final suture, withdrew her instruments, and let the incision close. The Raxnali healing factor, no longer fighting against intervention, did exactly what it was designed to do. It sealed the surgical site in less than 30 seconds, leaving barely a scar. The patch integrated perfectly, the heart's rhythm stabilized, and Pip's vital signs, which had been struggling and weak for his entire short life, suddenly looked like they belonged to a healthy predator cub. Imani stepped back, pulling off her surgical gloves. Bypass off. Let's see if that heart can do its job now. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then Pip's bioluminescent markings, which had been dim and irregular, suddenly blazed bright and steady. His breathing deepened, strengthened. His heart rate, visible on the monitor, settled into a strong, regular rhythm that made Landon actually gasp. "Well," Imani said, trying to keep her voice steady and failing because this was always the best part of the job, "looks like humans can fix broken things after all." The observation gallery erupted in chaos, some shouting about reviewing the procedure, others demanding to know how that had possibly worked, and a few already composing papers about this revolutionary technique. Imani ignored all of it and focused on the small predator cub who was already starting to wake up, his golden eyes blinking open with a clarity they'd never had before. "Hey there, Pip," she said softly. "Welcome to having a heart that actually works. Try not to cause too much trouble with it, okay?" Pip stared at her, then made a small chirping sound that the translator rendered as something between warm and safe and mine. "Oh no," Landon muttered. "Boss, I think you just got adopted by an apex predator." "Nonsense," Imani replied, even as Pip snuggled closer to her hand. "He's just grateful. It'll wear off." It did not, in fact, wear off. When Grennock came to collect his cub 3 hours later, after Pip had been monitored, scanned, and declared healthier than any Raxnali cub in recent medical history, the little predator refused to leave Imani's side. "The human fixed my heart," Pip announced in the wobbly but determined voice of a very young child who'd just learned something important. "The human fixed my broken heart when everyone said it couldn't be fixed. Humans fix broken things." Grennock looked at Imani with an expression that was hard to read on a face designed for intimidation. "You have my gratitude, Dr. Imani. This debt cannot be repaid, but it will be remembered." "Just doing my job," Imani replied, even though they both knew this had gone way beyond professional obligation. "Take care of him, Ambassador, and maybe get him regular checkups, yeah? That patch should hold for his lifetime, but better safe than sorry." "Humans fix broken things," Pip repeated, like he was memorizing a universal truth. "I'm going to tell everyone." Imani laughed, ruffling the cub's scaled head. "You do that, little guy." She had no idea, in that moment, that Pip would do exactly that, and that his childish declaration would spread across the galaxy like wildfire, changing everything humanity thought they knew about their place among the stars. She also had no idea that within 3 weeks she'd be intercepted by a Thornback cruiser whose warrior would demand, with a mixture of desperation and hope, that she fix his daughter. Because Pip had told everyone. Humans fix broken things, and the galaxy's predators were about to bring her their hearts. 3 weeks after Pip's surgery, Imani was trying very hard to pretend her life was normal again. It wasn't working. "So," Landon said, reviewing the messages flooding their shared communication terminal, "we've got 43 requests for consultations, 18 formal diplomatic inquiries, 6 marriage proposals. Why are aliens proposing to you? That's weird. And 1 very insistent Thornback warrior who says he'll intercept our transport if you don't respond in the next hour." Imani groaned into her coffee. They were supposed to be heading back to Earth. back to her tiny apartment, and her normal hospital shifts, and her gloriously boring routine of fixing human hearts that didn't come with interstellar political complications. "The marriage proposals are traditional gestures of alliance," she said tiredly. "At least, I think that's what the cultural database said. And you can tell the Thornback warrior that I'm a heart surgeon, not a—" The transport shuddered violently, alarms blaring as something very large and very armed pulled them out of faster-than-light travel. "Too late," Landon observed. "Pretty sure we just got intercepted." The communication screen flickered to life, showing a face that could generously be described as terrifying and accurately described as, "Oh God, we're going to die." Thornbacks were aptly named. Their entire bodies were covered in bone protrusions that could extend or retract at will, turning them into walking fortresses. This particular Thornback had scars across his face that suggested he'd walked through several wars and considered them light exercise. "Human Dr. Imani," the warrior rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "I am Gralt, of the Thornback clans. My daughter is dying. Pip of the Raxnali says you fix broken things." Imani set down her coffee very carefully, because throwing it at the screen wouldn't help, and might actually make things worse. "Gralt, I appreciate the urgency, but I'm a cardiovascular surgeon. I fix hearts, specifically. If your daughter has a different condition—" "She has a genetic disorder that is destroying her organs," Gralt interrupted. "Our best physicians say she has perhaps 10 cycles remaining. She is 6 rotations old. 6. His voice cracked on that last word, and suddenly he wasn't a terrifying warrior anymore. He was just a father watching his child die. Imani closed her eyes. "Damn it." "Send me her medical files," she said quietly, "and prepare a surgical bay. If I can help, I will." Gralt's daughter, whose name was a series of clicks that the translator rendered as "Little Storm," which Imani thought was adorable, had what humans would call multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. Her liver was failing, her kidneys were struggling, and her heart was starting to show the strain of compensating for everything else going wrong. It was bad. Really bad. But here's the thing about human medicine that the galaxy kept forgetting. Humans were exceptionally good at keeping dying things alive. They'd had to be. When you were a species made of fragile parts with no natural healing factor, you got creative about repairs, or you died. The surgery took 9 hours and required 3 different procedures that Imani performed simultaneously with Landon's help, and a very nervous Thornback medical team who kept insisting this was impossible. "Your medical technology is designed for enhancement," Imani explained, while her hands were literally inside a small alien's abdomen. "You make things stronger, faster, better. That's great for healthy individuals. But when something breaks, you don't have the tools to fix it delicately. You just try to regenerate through it, which doesn't work when the problem is genetic." She removed the damaged portions of the liver, installed synthetic filters to support the kidneys, and reinforced the heart with the same technique she'd used on Pip, giving structure to support natural healing rather than fighting against it. Little Storm woke up 3 hours after surgery, looked at Imani with huge, wondering eyes, and said the words that would become the rallying cry of predator cubs across 12 sectors. "The human fixed me. Humans fix broken things." Then she told her 2 best friends, who were both Thornback cubs. They told their parents. Those parents told their clans. The clans told their allies. Within a week, Imani's name was being spoken in languages she'd never heard of, on worlds she'd never visited, by species that would normally consider humans a light snack. The requests started coming in faster than Landon could catalog them. A Fangrel elder whose organs were failing after 3 centuries of life. Fixed. A Drachmon youth who'd shattered his spine in a hunting accident and been told he'd never walk again. Fixed. A void stalker with a neurological condition that caused constant pain. Fixed. Each time, Imani tried to say no. Each time, she was intercepted, begged, offered obscene amounts of wealth, or in one memorable case, threatened with a diplomatic incident that would make the Pip situation look like a friendly disagreement. Each time, she said yes, because what else could she do? These were dying cubs, suffering elders, wounded warriors, people in pain who'd been told their own advanced medicine couldn't help them. And each time she succeeded, the patient told others, "Humans fix broken things." The galactic medical community was having a collective breakdown. "This is barbarism," Dr. Mulquin of the Feldron Medical Institute announced during a broadcasted debate that Imani refused to participate in. "She uses blades. She cuts them open with primitive tools. She manually manipulates organs with her bare hands. This is not medicine. This is butchery dressed up as healing." The rebuttal came from an unexpected source. Grault himself, who crashed the debate with little Storm in his arms. "My daughter was dying," he said simply. "Your advanced medicine said nothing could be done. The human fixed her. You can debate techniques all you want, but I know which one gave me my child back." Little Storm waved at the cameras. "Humans fix broken things." The phrase became a phenomenon. Cubs across multiple predator species adopted it as truth. When adults tried to explain the complexity of medical procedures, the cubs would just shake their heads and repeat, "Humans fix broken things." It was frustratingly simple and absolutely accurate. Imani, exhausted and overwhelmed, found herself in the human medical station Nightingale's Rest, a facility that had been designed for human patients but was rapidly being retrofitted for an unexpected clientele. "We need to talk about sustainability," Landon said, bringing her a fresh coffee and a datapad full of numbers that made her head hurt. "Boss, you've performed 19 major surgeries in 6 weeks. You're running on stims and stubbornness. This isn't sustainable." "I know," Imani admitted, staring at the queue of requests that kept growing. "But what am I supposed to do, Landon? Turn them away? Tell them sorry? Your cub dies because I'm tired?" "You could ask for help. Recruit other human surgeons. Build a team." "And say what?" "Hey, want to become the galaxy's emergency room for predator species who've decided humans are miracle workers?" "That's insane." Landon grinned. "Boss, we passed insane when you agreed to cut open a Raxnali cub. Now, we're somewhere in the territory of legendary. Might as well commit." Before Imani could respond, the station's alert system chimed with an incoming priority message. It was from Nightingale's Rest traffic control, and the controller sounded absolutely terrified. "Dr. Imani, we have a situation. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple fleet signatures. They're not hostile. They're queuing. Ma'am, there are 53 ships from different predator species heading to this station, and they're all carrying medical cases. They're saying they brought you their hearts." Imani walked to the observation deck and stared at the impossible sight unfolding in the space beyond. 53 ships. Raxnali cruisers next to Thornback destroyers. Fangril scouts beside Drachmon carriers. Species that had been at war with each other for centuries, all waiting peacefully in formation. All of them here because their cubs were broken, and humans fixed broken things. "Landon," Imani said quietly, "I'm going to need that bigger team." "Already on it, boss. Already on it." The thing nobody tells you about becoming accidentally famous across multiple star systems is that it comes with logistical nightmares that make regular nightmares look pleasant by comparison. Imani stood in front of the assembled human medical staff. 43 surgeons, nurses, anesthesiologists, and technicians who'd dropped everything and traveled from Earth, Mars, Luna, and the outer colonies when the call went out. They looked excited, terrified, and slightly unhinged, which Imani decided was probably the correct emotional state for what they were about to attempt. "Right," she said, because speeches weren't really her thing, but somebody had to say something. "So, there are 53 ships out there containing approximately 200 patients from 18 different predator species. Most of them are cubs. All of them are cases their own medicine couldn't fix. We have 3 weeks to treat everyone before resources run critical and interspecies tensions get dangerous." A surgeon named Fontaine raised his hand. "Quick question. Are we insane?" "Absolutely," Imani confirmed. "Anyone want to leave?" Nobody moved. "Great. Landon's dividing you into teams based on specialty. Learn the anatomy, trust your training, and remember, we're not trying to be better than their technology. We're just offering something different. Questions?" "Yeah," said a nurse named Portia. "What do we call ourselves? Every good medical team needs a name." Landon, unable to help himself, grinned. "I vote for the Fix-It crew." The groans were immediate and loud. "I hate it," Imani said flatly. "It's perfect," Landon countered. "The Cubs already say we fix things. Lean into it. The Fix-It crew sounds like we repair appliances, not perform complex surgery on—" "All in favor?" Landon called out. 43 hands went up. Imani was outvoted in her own medical bay. "I hate all of you," she muttered, but she was smiling despite herself. "Fine. We're the Fix-It crew. Now let's go fix some hearts." What followed was 3 weeks that would be studied in medical schools for generations, though whether as an example of brilliant innovation or spectacular insanity remained hotly debated. The first case was a Wraith clan cub with a malformed lung that collapsed every few hours. Wraith clan physiology was notoriously difficult. They were semi-gaseous beings who could phase through solid matter, which made surgery complicated when your patient could literally slip through your fingers. Imani's solution: a synthetic support structure that phased with the cub's natural frequency, providing permanent reinforcement without restricting movement. It took 6 hours and required math that made Fontaine actually cry, but it worked. The cub's first words after waking: "The human fixed my broken breathing." The second case was worse: twin Raxnali cubs who shared a compromised circulatory system. Separating them meant rebuilding major vessels for both, performing essentially 2 complete cardiovascular surgeries simultaneously while keeping both patients stable. Imani took one twin. Fontaine took the other. Landon coordinated. Between them, calling out vital signs and praying to whatever gods listened to stubborn humans doing impossible things. 18 hours later, both cubs were stable, separated, and healthy. Their parents, who'd been told separation was impossible, wept openly in the waiting area. The third case broke everyone's hearts before they even started. An ancient thornback matriarch named Donna, who'd been in constant pain for 46 rotations from a battle wound that had healed wrong and compressed nerves throughout her back. "Our medicine sealed the wound," her clan explained, "but the damage beneath never healed. She's been in pain for longer than some of our warriors have been alive." The reconstructive work took 12 hours and required precision that made Imani's hands cramp. But when Donna woke up and moved without wincing for the first time in decades, the sound she made Relief and joy and disbelief all mixed together made every aching muscle worth it. I had forgotten, Donna whispered, what it felt like to exist without pain. The human gave me back something I thought was lost forever. The pattern continued. Day after day, surgery after surgery, species after species. The human medical team worked in rotating shifts, pushed themselves to exhaustion, and kept going because the alternative was unthinkable. And something unexpected happened in the waiting areas. Predator species that had been enemies for generations sat side by side, waiting for news about their cubs. Ancient rivals shared resources. Traditional adversaries kept the peace because their children were in human hands, and starting a fight seemed obscene when everyone was equally terrified and hopeful. A Raxnali parent brought food to a Thornback family who'd been waiting 18 hours for their cub's surgery to complete. A Fangrel elder comforted a young Drachmon mother whose child was in critical condition. A Voidstalker warrior organized a schedule so everyone got updates regularly and nobody panicked. It was the first recorded instance of this many predator species cooperating peacefully in a confined space. All because their cubs were broken, and they'd brought them to the humans who fixed broken things. Then, on day 12, disaster struck. Imani was 6 hours into a delicate neural surgery on a Feldrin cub when her hands started shaking. Not the normal surgeon's tremor that came from holding precise positions, actual trembling from exhaustion and stimulant overuse, and running on 3 hours of sleep in the past 48 hours. "Boss?" Landon's voice was careful. "You okay?" "Fine," Imani lied, trying to steady her grip. "Just need to." The world tilted sideways, and the last thing she remembered was Landon shouting her name before everything went dark. Imani woke up to the strangest sound she'd ever heard in a medical facility. Absolute silence, punctuated by what could only be described as anxious purring. She opened her eyes to find herself in a recovery bed, hooked up to IV fluids and monitors, with Landon sitting beside her looking simultaneously relieved and ready to commit murder. "You collapsed," he said flatly. "Mid-surgery. On day 12 of our 3-week marathon of impossible medical procedures. Want to guess who finished your surgery?" Imani's brain felt like it was moving through syrup. "Fontaine?" "Fontaine, yes, with assistance from 3 Thornback parents, who have absolutely no medical training but very steady hands." Landon's expression softened slightly. "Boss, the waiting room is full of predators who are losing their minds because you're hurt. They've been out there for 6 hours, and I'm running out of ways to tell apex hunters that the human who's been fixing their cubs needs to rest. The Feldron cub is fine, stable, already awake and asking about you." Landon handed her a cup of water. "Drink this. Doctor's orders. My orders. I'm pulling rank." Imani drank, her mind slowly catching up to her body's very loud complaints about the past 2 weeks. "How many surgeries left?" 43. "But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about how you nearly killed yourself because you can't say no to a sick cub." "That's not fair." "It's completely fair, and you know it." Before Imani could respond, the door to her room opened. She expected Fontaine, maybe Portia, coming to check vitals. She did not expect Grault, the massive Thornback warrior whose daughter she'd saved weeks ago, ducking through the doorway with his bone protrusions carefully retracted to avoid damaging the equipment. "Human Dr. Imani," Grault said, his voice unusually gentle for someone who could probably bite through starship plating. "We heard you were injured fixing our cubs." "Not injured," Imani corrected automatically. Just exhausted. I'm fine, really. You collapsed. Gralt stated this like it was a significant tactical problem requiring immediate solution. You have been fixing our broken cubs without rest, without proper support, because we brought you our hearts, and you couldn't refuse. It's my job. It is not your job to die for us. Gralt's tone was firm. Little Storm asked me a question when she heard you were hurt. She asked, "The human fixes broken things, but who fixes the broken human?" Imani blinked. That's actually a fair question. We would like to propose an answer. Gralt stepped aside, and suddenly the room was filling with predators, carefully, slowly, making sure they didn't crowd the small human in the recovery bed. Drenna, the thornback warrior whose cub Imani had treated on day 4, was carrying medical supplies. A Raxnali parent had brought something that looked like high-protein supplements. A Fangrel elder held what appeared to be scheduling data pads. A Void Stalker had actual human-compatible food, which someone had clearly researched extensively because it was from Earth and looked freshly prepared. "You fix our broken cubs," Drenna said, simply. "We will fix our broken human. You need rest. We will organize guard shifts so you can sleep safely. You need food. We will ensure you eat properly. You need help with surgeries. We will assist however we can, even if we have no medical training." Imani found herself without words, which was unusual. You realize you're predator species offering to serve a prey species, right? That's unprecedented. Yes, Gralt agreed. And when historians write about this moment, they will note that it happened because a human looked at our dying cubs and said, "I can fix that," without asking for payment or territory or advantage. You gave us our children's lives. The least we can do is ensure you survive to continue your work. The Fix-It crew needs fixing, Landon observed, and despite everything, Imani laughed. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, but I need something from all of you in return." The predators went very still, waiting. "I need you to understand something," Imani continued. "Your medicine isn't inferior to ours. It's just different. You've built incredible technology for enhancement, regeneration, extending life. That's amazing. But you never developed reconstructive techniques because you never needed them. Your species healed too well or died too quickly. There's no shame in that." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Humans had to learn to fix broken things because everything about us breaks. We're fragile, we scar, we need tools to do what your bodies do naturally. But that fragility? It taught us how to repair carefully, precisely, gently. We're not better at medicine. We're just better at fixing things that other species forgot could be fixed." Drenna made a sound like distant thunder. "You are saying we should not worship human medicine as superior, but recognize it as complementary." "Exactly. And maybe," Imani smiled tiredly, "maybe we could teach each other. Your enhancement techniques could revolutionize human medicine. Our reconstructive methods could help predator species with genetic conditions. We're stronger together than separate." "The human speaks wisdom," Gralt announced. "Now she will rest while we organize proper support for her medical team. This is not negotiable." It wasn't. The predator species, with the kind of efficiency that came from being apex hunters, transformed the chaotic medical operation into something sustainable. They organized shift schedules, ensuring no human worked more than 12 hours without rest. They coordinated meal preparation, bringing food from human colonies when station supplies ran low. They even assembled assistance teams, predators with steady hands and careful temperaments who could hold retractors, monitor vitals, and provide extra support during long surgeries. It was the first recorded instance of predator species serving as medical assistants to prey species. It was also weirdly effective. The remaining 43 surgeries were completed over 2 weeks instead of one, with proper rest periods and backup support. The success rate remained perfect. Every cub healed. Every elder found relief. Every warrior regained function they'd thought permanently lost. And when the last surgery finished, a Drachmon cub with a congenital spinal defect that Fontaine handled beautifully, while Imani supervised and definitely did not cry when the cub took his first steps. Something unprecedented happened. The predator species, all 53 ships representing 18 different civilizations, requested a formal ceremony. "We brought you our hearts," Grennock explained, standing with Pip, who'd grown noticeably in the weeks since his surgery and was looking healthy and strong. "Not metaphorically, literally. We brought you our children, our elders, our warriors, the hearts of our civilizations. And you fixed them." The ceremony took place in the main observation deck, which had been carefully reinforced because hosting several hundred predators in one space was an engineering challenge nobody had attempted before. Each species presented Imani with a gift, but they weren't the treasures or weapons or territorial offers that typically accompanied diplomatic exchanges. Pip approached first, holding something small and glowing. "This is a Raxnali heartstone," he explained in his young but increasingly confident voice. "It forms inside our bodies over time, and we only give them to family. You fixed my broken heart. You are my family now." The crystal pulsed with soft light as Pip placed it in Imani's hands, and she had to blink rapidly to clear her suddenly blurry vision. Little Storm came next, presenting a thornback claw, not torn out, but naturally shed and carefully etched with Imani's name in 3 languages. "This is our way of declaring kinship," the young thornback explained. "You are clan now." The Wraith clan cub gave her a void pearl, a rare crystallization that supposedly only formed in the presence of someone who'd banished fear. The twin Raxnali cubs presented matching scales that would grow back for them but represented permanent bonds. Donna, the ancient thornback matriarch, gave her a piece of her own bone plating, voluntarily shed, which was apparently an honor reserved for the most respected warriors. On and on it went, each gift carrying weight beyond its physical form. When the last present had been given, Imani looked at the assembled predators and finally understood what Grault had meant weeks ago. "You didn't bring me your hearts to fix," she said quietly, her voice carrying in the silence. "You brought me your hearts because you trusted me with them." "Yes," Grennock confirmed, "and that trust has not been misplaced." The shift in galactic politics happened almost overnight. Predator species that had viewed humans as amusing but ultimately insignificant suddenly became humanity's most vocal advocates. When the Feldrun Medical Institute tried to file formal complaints about dangerous human medical practices, they found themselves facing a united coalition of predators who politely suggested that anyone criticizing the humans who'd saved their cubs might want to reconsider their priorities. Mulquin's smear campaign collapsed spectacularly when a Drachmon elder publicly declared, "The Feldrun healer tried to enhance my grandson, making his condition worse. The human healer fixed his heart without asking for anything in return. I know which approach honors life, and I know which species I trust with my family's future." The human diplomatic corps, after approximately 18 hours of confused panic, followed by cautious celebration, issued a statement that basically amounted to, "We have no idea how this happened, But apparently humans are now under the protection of the galaxy's most dangerous species. So, yay? The Interstellar Accord created a new position: Human Medical Liaison, with full diplomatic status and authority to coordinate medical exchanges between species. The Predator Coalition insisted that Dr. Imani was the only acceptable candidate. Her response, delivered during a formal session that was broadcast across 12 sectors: "I'll do it, but I need a bigger medical bay, a proper team, and someone to handle the paperwork because I'm a surgeon, not an administrator." Landon volunteered for administrative duties, which everyone agreed was either brave or insane. The medical station Nightingale's Rest was expanded, refitted, and redesigned as the first multi-species medical facility focused on reconstructive and rehabilitative care. Human surgical techniques were formally added to Galactic medical curricula, not as replacements for existing technology, but as complementary approaches for conditions that regeneration alone couldn't address. And the phrase that had started it all, "Humans fix broken things," became something more than a Cub's simple declaration. It became a philosophy that different approaches to healing weren't competing, but complementary, that fragility could teach strength, and that sometimes the best medicine was simply caring enough to try. 3 months after the fleet's departure, Imani was back in her expanded medical facility, reviewing cases and planning surgical schedules, when Landon announced she had a visitor. It was Pip, now adolescent-sized, and accompanied by 3 smaller cubs. "Dr. Imani," Pip said formally, then immediately dropped the formality because he was still young enough to be excited about everything. "These are my cousins. They wanted to meet the human who fixes broken things." Imani looked at the 3 young Raxnali cubs, all staring at her with wide, golden eyes full of hope and trust, and the absolute certainty that humans could fix anything. She laughed, the sound mixing exhaustion and joy and acceptance of her absolutely insane new reality. "Landon," she called out, "we're going to need more surgical supplies." "Already ordered, boss," came the cheerful response. Imani knelt down to be eye level with the cubs. "Okay, little ones, let's see what we're working with. But I need to know, are any of you actually broken, or did Pip just bring you here to show off?" The smallest cub chirped something the translator rendered as, "Pip says you're the best at fixing things. And also you give good head scritches." "Pip, we've talked about your priorities." "Head scritches are important." Imani's apartment that evening was full of young predators, all of them carefully supervised by their parents, who waited outside with the kind of patience that came from knowing their cubs were safe with the human who'd fixed broken things. She sat on her floor, surrounded by apex predator cubs who were playing with human toys and asking questions about Earth, and occasionally requesting the aforementioned head scritches, and thought about how absolutely bizarre her life had become. Her communication terminal chimed with an incoming message from the Interstellar Accord. Another request, another broken cub, another chance to do what humans did best: fix things. Not because they were superior or special or chosen, but because they'd learned, through millennia of being fragile in a universe that didn't care, that sometimes the most important skill wasn't being strong enough to avoid breaking. It was being gentle enough to put things back together. "Landon," she messaged, "schedule permitting, we've got incoming patients next week. And someone should probably tell the diplomatic corps that my apartment is currently full of predator cubs who are definitely not supposed to be here." His response was immediate. "Already took pictures for blackmail purposes. Also, boss, the galaxy's calling you the Fixer now. It's trending on 6 different networks." Imani groaned. That's even worse than the Fix-It crew. Embrace it. You're famous. I'm a surgeon. I just want to fix hearts. Yeah, Landon replied, and you're really, really good at it. Now get some sleep. You've got 3 surgeries tomorrow, and I'm not letting you collapse again. Imani looked around at the cubs who'd fallen asleep in her living room, their bioluminescent markings creating a soft, peaceful glow. Their parents would collect them soon, but for now, they were content. Safe in the presence of the human who fixed broken things. She pulled a blanket over the smallest one, who murmured something that sounded like safe in his sleep, and smiled. Yeah, she could live with this. Broken things needed fixing, and humans, fragile, stubborn, impossibly determined humans, had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. They'd learned to fix what others thought couldn't be repaired. And the galaxy's predators, having brought their hearts to the humans who could mend them, would make sure nobody ever forgot it.